Alrighty. Hey gang, welcome back. So this one is going to be probably pretty boring for most of you, although maybe not. A little interesting, I guess. It's fun to look at a fire. But this is mostly for folks who are building a Walker riserless core to give you an idea of what it should look like when it's performing correctly and how it burns and all that. So this is my little experimental test one. This isn't the one in the house. This is a fully insulated core built using ceramic fiberboard, and my air setting in the back is a little different. I used a piece of ceramic fiberboard 45 across the back corner to replace that metal air channel, and it's working pretty well. But mostly what it does is it gives me the opportunity to show you what's happening back there from the front. Now, in the stove in the house, there's that window in the kitchen side, and that is there for a reason. When I first started working on this Walker pre-port air tube on Peter Vandenberg's 6-inch batch box standard with a riser, what I realized was that when it was doing really well according to the testo, there wasn't much going on in the firebox, so it was hard to see from the front how you were performing. So, and I built the Walker riserless core. I put that window there after the secondary air injection point so you could monitor what's going on, and that's really where the action is. So it's good for viewing the fire, it's good for getting some heat out of there, but more than anything, it gave me an opportunity to see what was happening back there. And I didn't really anticipate it was going to be a permanent feature, but it works so well with it, it's just great. So this stove doesn't have that, and what I found is that you tend to run it from what you can see in the front, and so you'll get it wrong a lot, and you'll end up doing what is the worst thing in a burn like this, which is what I call a front burn, which is where the whole firebox is lit up from the front, and you really don't have any secondary burn going because all your gases are firing off up here, and it's not pulling hard enough to get the secondaries pulling hard, and maybe your pre-port air tube is not heated up and you're quenching the fire back there. So those are all problems, and those are what are going to make you smoke out of the chimney, although this thing is pretty hard to get smoking once it's up and running. So it's really warm right now. The insulated firebox just glows bright red when it's hot. I'm going to have a hard time pointing things out to you, but most of you who are building one are going to know what I'm talking about. So we're looking in the window. We've got our primary air here, and I'm going to get the dimensions wrong because I don't have anything to measure it with, and it's been a while since I measured, but it's roughly an inch by 3 plus. And there is the secondary air port right below that, which you can't see, but you guys have all seen it before, and it's roughly the same size. It's 2 3/4 by 1 1/4 inches, or maybe 2 1/4 1/4 inches. Anyways, doesn't really matter. I've got it written down somewhere. So what we're seeing in there is a nice hot firebox. In the very back, you'll see the vertical slot in my 45 air secondary air delivery system that is pulling from down below. This is the primary, right? So right below here is the secondary. So let me show you what it is you should be going for when you're burning this thing. What you really want to have happen is you want to have the gases being formed in the firebox here in the front, and you want that to hit that back wall hot with everything heated up back there, and ignite the mixing oxygen and fuel gas or wood gas as it turns the corner and wraps around. So I got a little piece of oak flooring here. It's going to be really hot. It's going to throw off a lot of gas right away, and that's going to be pretty good to illustrate how you might want to run your stove when it's hot. One reason I'm choosing this rather than a full load is because we can see over it. So this is just an example, so we can see over it and look and see what's happening in the back there. So here we go. Don't know what to tell you. I'll just say All right, let's see if I can get this back there without killing myself. Yeah, that's all right. Alrighty, so you can see it's just flaring off there. Now, if I plug the primary here, and I won't plug it entirely, but pretty good, what you'll see, and it's going to just gas for a second, what you'll see is that that secondary air is going to start to take over because the stove wants to pull, and it's going to start pulling through the bottom. I can't see it. And what you'll see is that secondary, and you'll start to see the air, there it is, yeah, coming out of the slot, right? And lighten off in the back of the firebox. Now we've got a big empty firebox right now, so there's a lot of any little leaks are moving through there, and we're going to get some front flames and stuff. But if we work it right, we'll have a big load of fuel, and it'll be kind of dark up here, and you won't see much action in there. And you'll see almost all of that. You won't see it, but almost all that action will be in the back. And there's a lot happening after it turns the corner, where we're highly insulated, and where things are just getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. So we'll just watch it for a sec. So that initial burst of wood gas kind of overpowers the firebox, and you can see it'll all light off up in front. But now we're settling in, and you'll see little wisps of smoke, wood gas, that are drifting out this way towards the front of the firebox, but there's no oxygen, so they're not lighting off. And then as they go through the firebox and get to the back there, and you'll see I got some little leaks under the floor that are coming up on either side, and that's why we're getting some flames on the side, and that's good. That'll help generate wood gas when that firebox is stuffed with larger pieces of wood that don't give off gas quite so fast. This is a pretty extreme situation we've got here. We've got, even though it's just one little piece of oak, it's sitting on hot coals, and it's just blowing off all of its volatiles right now at a really high rate. Usually what I would do is we'd have like a couple large chunks of fir in there, and it will gas off more slowly. And that's why, part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation and show you guys what you're doing, because you're going to tune it differently depending on the fuel you put in there. So there we go, that little piece of oak just totally gave off all its gas, and now it's done, right? See that? It just shut down in a, like, instant. So, like I say, part of the reason we're having this conversation is because you're going to want to tune this depending on how hot your firebox is, what type of fuel you're using, and by tuning, you're mostly, your draft, that's going to be real important, all those things. And tuning is just going to be a function of adjusting your primary air inlet. And so what I've got a little piece of ceramic fiberboard here because it doesn't get hot and I can touch it. I'm going to build something better once I get it figured out and what my fuel needs dictate. But again, shoulder season, midwinter cold, oak, maple, fir, all are going to require different settings at different times. So when it's real hot like that, usually regardless of no matter what type of fuel I'll load it and plug it, okay? Because then, as you can see, it gives off a lot of gas on the hot coals, and the stove can manage that pretty well if I plug the front. And it can eat that. Once it burns off its initial blast of gas, usually you can open that guy back up somewhat. And it depends on what we've got it going on in there. If there's a few big pieces of wood and they're going to go for a while, you can sort of manage how much fuel you give that back end by adjusting this air inlet. So what you really want to settle into is just a nice, stable fuel delivery, and that's one of the reasons why I settled on this. You know, Peter's stove it's just a piece of work, and just like a J rocket tube, they just run full tilt, and only full tilt, and they do that because that's really how you're going to get the absolute best to the nth degree efficiency numbers, because you can drive that oxygen real low, excess air, and get your stack temp dialed in, and you'll maximize your efficiency numbers. But that isn't maximizing complete combustion. It doesn't, not to say you're minimizing it either, just complete combustion is complete combustion. So we can get that, in other words, burning up all the organic volatiles, we can get that with a lot of range of efficiency depending on how much excess air there is and what our difference in temperature is, and all that stuff. And I was going somewhere with this, and where I'm going with it is that when I ran a normal J-tube and when I ran a normal rocket batch box in my home, what I discovered was that with different fuel, with different outside conditions, different inside conditions, and owning a testo, I think that's really the crux of the biscuit there, is that once you have a testing machine and you know what's happening, at least for me, I just was no longer satisfied. If you load wood in fuel into a setting like this in a regular batch box, in my experience, you know, you just have some real dirty moments. And that isn't, I'm not talking down about those stoves. They just don't fit the way I burn, because I, being an American, I guess I'm used to having a fire going all the time. You know, Peter lives in a very well-designed house, and Peter, you're just a real inspiration to me. I wish I could build my house that well and have one fire a day, but I can't. My house is full of leaks, and it's just like a shack, you know. So, and I'm used to having a piece of metal sitting there blasting heat in my face, and I like that. And it's warm in here, and people are always like, you did 5 cords in a year? And I'm like, yeah, it was 95, and I cooked all, you know, brisket and ribs all day. But those are choices, right? So Peter chooses to have a lovely designed house and spend very little time heating it, which is so smart. And so those stoves burn one load at a moment at a time, and then they go out, and then the mass takes over. And I just don't have that ability to run that way, so I've always tuned my stoves to have load after load loaded on them. So that was a really long way of saying the way I got to this air setting, or the reason I got to it, is because while I'm a huge fan of this rocket technology, and that's basically what this is based on, without the means to manage different fuel settings and different air settings and all that, I really ended up with a stove that wasn't as clean as much of the time as I would like. So the Walker Preport secondary air tube in a regular batch box with a riser, or the Walker riserless Cookstove core, they really helped me achieve my goal of being able to manage the burn and get a clean burn, and for me that's a carbon monoxide number. I just want to see that sucker down there in the 0s and 10s, not in the 100s, and I can do that and manage that, get that flat line throughout this whole burn using these types of air settings. So, and one more note on that, on those efficiency charts on the test stove, Peter likes to pick on me because of the excess air, and I would just like to point out to all of those of you who don't have a test stove that is simply a reflection on the efficiency number at the end of the run. I don't care about that. I know that I'm burning all the carbon monoxide. Efficiency is going to be a function of how well I can tune my stack temps to be right at the point where they're pulling enough to not cause problems, but I have a small difference in temperature, so I'm getting the most temperature into the house, and excess air, so I'm not heating a bunch of air and then blowing it out the chimney. And that's the one that drives Peter crazy, because he's chased the stack temp, and now you chase the most difficult factor, which is excess air, and your efficiency goes up and up and up. Well, I've got a really shitty bench. And I got holes everywhere, right? Between what happens here after it's burnt, in other words, from the cooktop all the way to the chimney, I got leaks. And so when I stick the test stove in the chimney, you're going to see a lot of excess air. I don't care. It's not going to take I'm not going to waste my time trying to patch gaps under the backside of that bench to get a good efficiency number. I'm burning the carbon monoxide down to the 0s and 1s, and so I know that my front end is doing well. At some point we'll build a really good one with really tight, no air leaks, and then you can test it. But Peter's got a great way of doing that. A couple barrels stacked up, do it in a shop. I can do that. Firewood's valuable though. I'm cold. So someone wants to do that, do it yourself. Just kidding. Anyways, as you can see, here's how this should look. Evan, pay attention. There's no one else out there with one of these. Yeah, I'll build them with heavy bricks if you build them at all. So it doesn't really matter. Evan, only you. Thank you. That's how it should look. Dark up front, lit off in the back. And you can see light in the back of the firebox because most of the action is happening around the corner. So windows back there around the corner on the other side, those are really, really good as you learn to run this stove. But if you don't have it, you want it to look something like this. Now you can heat the thing up, let the air out of there, let the air into there. What'll happen is this wood will light off, and we won't have a full front burn. You can have a burn in the front of here and a nice viewing fire as long as you have the fire lit off in the back. When I talk about a front burn, that's usually something that happens early in the burn when the secondary air delivery system is not preheated, and you'll just get a big fire going here and nothing going in the back, and the stove will smoke like crazy. So you want to avoid that. That was really the gist of it. So there you go. Hope that helps. Hope some of you found it interesting. Sorry about the little dog eating in the background. Every time I start talking, he thinks it's time to eat. So all the videos get that. Waylon, he's just a goofball, dude. Good boy. Okay, thanks for watching. Have a great day, y'all.